And cool. So I'm very excited today to have the founder and CEO of UpContent. UpContent is the leading content curation software out there. And one of my favorite things about it is it solves so many problems that our clients have. For example, UpContent could be solved to completely automate your social media, email newsletter, and you also have a website widget to make sure your site is always up to date with new, fresh content without you having to actually go in and keep up to date with industry news. UpContent does that for you. You could do it in a way that you review things, or you can make it completely hands-off, automated. It also has some cool features as well. I know when I send articles through email newsletter or social media, when I share them, really that person clicks this article and I lost that person. Did they click it? Did they visit it? Did they go back to SmartSites? And probably not. And UpContent, really ingenious way that they make it that when you click a link, third-party link, whether it's from this widget or social media or email newsletter, you get this little sidebar sticky and with a call to action to not only track this, but also get people back into your website. So some really, really cool features. I love the product. And without further ado, Scott, want to take it away?
That sounds great. Thanks, Mike. And thanks again, everyone, for making time. What we're going to hopefully focus on and what I'm going to try to discuss is more of how to think about the use of UpContent as it relates to some of the clients that you're working on, some of the challenges that they may be facing, and then most importantly, ways to help to supplement and reinforce some of the work that you're already doing without eclipsing on the budgetary side. Certainly, we'll spend some time digging into UpContent itself, but I know Mike included in this invite as well a link to a video review that he had done that shows some of the nuances there. And I'm certainly happy to speak with anybody directly, and we can go through your specific cases individually as well. So what we like to talk about when we talk about working with our partners and our agencies is this idea of content acceleration. And so building upon what Mike was talking about, really where we see the most success in utilizing UpContent is not as a replacement in its entirety of the original content that you may be creating or helping to be created for those clients, but instead finding a new way to get additional value out of those original pieces without having to just write for the sake of creating volume. Many of your clients likely have some really great, unique things that they want to share that they feel very strongly about. They may not have one of those every week or even one of those every month. And so rather than creating for volume, how do we shift the budget to focus more on creating fewer, better pieces from an SEO perspective, just from a sheer quality perspective, and then utilize UpContent to also showcase that client as a resource, and then, as Mike had mentioned, drive that traffic back to those original pieces to get conversion. So really our focus is driving revenue through content without having to write it. And I know Mike had mentioned a tool called Content Studio. There are other content curation tools out there. Content Studio is certainly one of them. If you've utilized Content Studio in the past, they're very much of a walled garden style tool, right? All in one. You can utilize their tool for curation. You can utilize their social media sharing, their email, and their website widget. One of the challenges that we faced when I was running an agency, and one of the reasons we created UpContent, was that our clients already knew what they wanted to use, or we had other reasons for selecting other tools for those distribution channels. Maybe their Buffer is their tool that they like to use for social. We don't want to have to convince them to replace that and then also utilize curated content, or they're using MailChimp or HubSpot or something else. It's going to be very hard to convince somebody to rip out HubSpot because you want to send out a newsletter with third-party articles and replace it with something else. And so the focus of UpContent is to really power those cross-channel strategic curation practices, meaning that just like you do with your original content, where you're ideally not writing a blog post just to send out a tweet about it, but you're utilizing Twitter or other social posts or email campaigns as distribution of that original content, we think third-party articles should be approached in the same way. You're finding the article, you're approving the article as valuable to be shared, and then you are crafting specifically to those channels. And as Mike had mentioned, identifying the best next step for that person by channel and by article, depending on how they're engaging with that content. So in many cases, when you think about clients where this is best for, it's wherever trust matters. So wherever a portion of that purchase decision is based upon does this organization know what they're talking about? Is this somebody I want to work with? Obviously, that's a pretty broad swath of organizations where it necessarily wouldn't be a slam dunk valuable play is if I was a online candy e-commerce store, for example, right? And I just want my Dum Dum lollipops. I don't really care who I'm getting it from. As long as I'm getting it for the right price and they're actually what I think they are, I'm good to get that content. UpContent's probably not going to be your great sales there. But if you're working with any professional services organizations, anywhere, whether it's in professional services, also meaning trade services, if I'm providing HVAC services or cleaning services, and I'm looking to you to help me understand, do you know what you're doing? Is this something you care about? That's a great place for UpContent to fit in. Any technology companies, real estate, accounting, healthcare, education, those are all areas where third-party content can be extremely valuable. And as Mike had mentioned as well, and really our focus is to support across multiple channels. So this is not just a way to fill up your social posting calendar or help your client fill up their social posting calendar, but really allowing you to map this out strategically, understand that if I share this article through social, I can have a call to action that gets people to sign up for an email newsletter as a micro conversion point. Now I have the email address, I'm going to send out those weekly email newsletters or monthly email newsletters. And when somebody clicks on an article there, I'm going to take them back to the website where I can have a deeper conversion and continue to build that relationship. So you'll see a number of those primary use cases set there. And then, as Mike had mentioned as well, our price point starts relatively low. We have a number of individuals who are just utilizing it. Maybe they're an executive in an organization or a salesperson by themselves, and they want to be able to showcase that they know what they're talking about. It's not necessarily sanctioned or supported by their company, or maybe they are their company, and they want to be able to share that content. We can support that for as little as $150 a year to accomplish that. The price point range that you're seeing here, and we'll look at that in a second, is what would also allow you to bring that same content curation effort into an email campaign or onto the website as well. And so from an agency perspective, we've certainly seen it leveraged in a number of ways. More of what I think Mike and you and I have talked about, which is recommendation of use and how this can then fit into the work that this team is already providing to that client as another way to help them get more out of that if they have some of that bandwidth to assist and support, or as another way to branch into additional services. So maybe email was something that was talked about with the client in the past, but the challenge was they didn't have enough budget to create enough content to make an email worthwhile. This can be a way to, for a very small incremental amount, be able to reintroduce the idea of an email campaign and have the content piece taken care of as well. Any thoughts, questions, kind of clients that strike you as either on the fringe or ones that you're thinking of that this would make sense that we could carry through as an example? Brave volunteers in the group here.
I could give one. So a mutual client, not a mutual client, but a client that I'm just somewhat involved with. Olivia, this is your client. They're in the drug rehab industry business, and they want us to do social media, by the way, which isn't one of our core competencies, right? So in my head, if I'm a drug rehab center, addiction treatment center, maybe I want to post on my social media some articles that are like, fentanyl has increased in Massachusetts, like whether it's good or bad, right? It's almost like it makes sense for their audience to see this. Mm-hmm. I'd be curious to see what your kind of like curation automation kind of gets in that niche.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I think some key points that you touched on that make that a really good fit is there's a couple of things that play there. One is, as the rehab center, there's an expectation of someone coming to read that content that all of the content is going to be either, quote unquote, biased toward using their services, that they have the best approach to rehab, et cetera. And so if I don't yet have a clear understanding of who that center is and who's behind it, I may only put a small amount of initial credibility into that. Like, of course, you're going to say that your approach is the best, right? You're the ones who wrote it. But if I can then instead go and find other articles written by other, whether they're research institutions or other hospitals or other organizations that are studying this area that are also recommending that type of an approach or talking about the challenge, to make those individuals who are consuming that content feel like this group understands them and can help inform them so that they're making a better decision on where to go for that treatment. That would be where curated content could fit in very well. That's a great example. So again, we'll switch over to the technology, but also wanted to walk through just some initial ideas. And all of these numbers and values are generally just kind of what we've seen. We've seen quite a range as well in terms of the fee. And of course, that fee depends on how much you as an agency are putting into providing the service versus letting them do it for themselves. And so this offering, kind of the true content acceleration offering, is what we've seen utilized the most. This is, again, supporting the standing up of a content curation program and tying that into the multiple channels that they probably already have and are most likely underutilizing. So helping curated articles be distributed across social media, having that convert into an email marketing campaign, having those articles also possibly appear on the website, taking that drug rehab example as well. If I make my way to the site and all I'm seeing in that research phase of my journey is content that they wrote about themselves, yes, it's helpful. It's helpful for me learning about them. It may not be helpful to me learn about exactly what types of services I truly need. And so providing third-party content to reinforce that in the space that they are also not only helps them move more quickly in that process, but that organization is the one that helped to provide that information, even if they didn't write it. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter who's the one who wrote it. People remember who the person is who gave them that information, and we're told about that. And so that's really where we fit in. As Mike had mentioned as well, there is that conversion opportunity that we've touched on, so that you have that opportunity to truly measure how that traffic is moving through these third-party articles. It's not just a way to, again, fill up the space and have something there. You're doing those things as a way to drive that conversion rate. And again, you'll see kind of the margins and recommended retainers that we've seen as well. We've also have that lower cost, which I think was more when Mike was talking about the price point side. This would really be an entry path in, which is really just focusing on a single channel. In this case, really just focusing on social media. So maybe they have a Facebook page, maybe they're doing some work on LinkedIn. And we've all known these clients, right, where it's kind of garbage, right? It exists. There's that peaks and valleys of what's going on. They don't know what's working or not. They make claims that social media just doesn't work for them. Those types of clients, we're really trying to dig in and figure out what that true challenge is for them. In a lot of cases, they're just not approaching it properly. And so helping them to find an easy way to be able to review and approve articles. And in many cases, in this view, it's really just standing up that UpContent account for them, being their eyes and ears from an aerial coverage perspective. They would be the ones then approving those articles and getting them out onto those channels. And then you can always then move up and offer to do more, and obviously that increases the retainer relationship as well. As I mentioned, the really important piece I think to think about when introducing this is looking at the stack that you may already be using or that client may already be using. And what we've really focused upon is ensuring that UpContent can tie into whatever tools they're leveraging. So if they're e-commerce and they're using Klaviyo, we tie directly into that. If it's MailChimp, fine. Constant Contact, sure. ActiveCampaign, that works too. HubSpot's fine also. So you as a group can then still continue to feel confident in making those recommendations, irregardless of what other tools that they're using on the distribution side. And your process of getting that started or working with our team to get that started, whether it's just a referral or if you're actually managing that for them, we're here to help you with each of those stages. So I'm going to just run through this quickly, and then we'll turn over to the tool itself. So this tends to be how we've seen success occur. So having that initial kind of playing around phase. So anyone who has an interest in leveraging it, I know that Mike, you already have an account. Certainly we can invite other people to collaborate with you if you would like inside of that account, or we can have independent accounts for different individuals to try out everything on your own side of things. You're going to have some questions that come up there. We can use that as a test bed. Again, we want to make sure that when you're making those recommendations, this is not just I'm just going to say this as many times as possible, and maybe one client's going to say yes, and I'll get my 20% of $15, like, oh boy, so you can go buy yourself half a Snickers bar. Congratulations. The hope is that you're only introducing this where it's actually going to not only give that incremental value to you, but also help to make the other things where you are making the margin, where you are seeing success, and how you do want to drive that client into a future relationship where you're making 100% of that more successful. And you're doing it in a way that's keeping them from looking at everybody else who's walking by and those other random spammy emails they get about other people offering SEO or content services, because they know if they do something else, they're going to lose the wisdom that you've provided about how all this stuff connects together. And so after that first period, then we want to look for that one client. Maybe it's that rehab center. I think that's a great example. And if you don't have one, you don't have one, right? No point doing round pegs and square holes, or maybe the other way around, whatever one it is. And then we create that sales funnel. After we've seen that success, it's always easier after that first successful implementation to get things going. And that then moves into more of the solution partner mindset. So if we're starting to see some growth together as a group, that's when we can start doing some really interesting joint thought leadership, presenting how it works, and doing more that's just going to help things accelerate further. So if we switch over to look at UpContent, the first thing I'll mention is you'll see that it is mobile responsive for those clients of yours who do want to be in control of the content that goes out, but are never sitting in front of a computer, even in a quarantine period. We do have the opportunity to leverage all this on the phone. It is collaborative, where you can jump in and out of client accounts if you choose to. Think of it like HubSpot hubs if you've used that model in the past. We're also then available inside of any of those tools. So if you are, for whatever reason, helping on the social media side and they're using Hootsuite, you'll see that we're actually embedded inside of the Hootsuite platform as well, just to make life easier. As a high-level view of how everything fits together, there are two main areas to the UpContent platform. There's a lot of different ways to leverage those two main areas, but the two areas really are topic areas, where you can create a topic around whatever is most interesting to you. We do not kind of force feed specific categories where you then have to look at the health category and somehow find relevant content for a drug rehab center that may only be 1 out of 100 in there, but really be able to create what you're most interested in. We do have a guided view here, which will just walk you through that process. Or you can move into, if you do feel a little more advanced, into our advanced view here. So I can do, and I don't know, I'm making this up. And I can add all those in. I can also add in some, well, spelling correctness is good. But I can also add in variations to that inside of the same topic area. So if I wanted to, instead of just rehabilitation, maybe they're just talking about rehab. And if I wanted to actually make that an exact phrase as well to ensure that I'm only finding specific drug rehab content, I can do that here. Name it whatever you'd like, add as many other lines as you would like. And then I can also add it into a folder, which is going to determine whom on my team has access to that stage. So we can also make sure that we're not overwhelming either the client or other individuals that are collaborating with you on that account, so that everyone's seeing only what they need to see and approving only what they need to approve. We do have our own crawler that's going out and finding these articles. It is worldwide, currently English language only, but we will be introducing additional languages before probably mid-year, so that you'll be able to search in those other languages as well. As the content's coming through, obviously you may have selected other topic criteria as well, but you will see that we're finding articles usually on average about 30% more content than a Google Alert or Google News filter would, because we're looking at articles as well from industry trade publications or other organizations that may not be considered a news outlet by Google, but are an authoritative source in your topic area. You do also have the opportunity to remove certain publications so that you're filtering them out of your view. And you can also focus in on specific geographies as well, if you choose to. Both the removal of publications, the geographic focus will be remembered for you, not only during this session, but every time you come back. And then I do have the opportunity certainly to click into an article, and I can read through the article and determine if this one would be one that would be of interest to my client. Maybe one of these 7 treatment areas, or maybe all 7, are things that that rehab facility that you're talking about offers. So this may be an interesting article that I could then leverage. I can go ahead and add this article to the different channels if I am leveraging channels beyond simply social. And I'm not going to actually do this because this is our website and social and email, and I think people would get fairly confused fairly quickly if we added these on here. But I can add it to one of, in this case, 4 sections of the website, our upcoming email digest that goes out weekly, branded social. If it's a larger client and they do have an employee advocacy program, we can add that in there. We have connections into Slack if it's just for internal news. And probably most importantly, when that article is approved, they also have the opportunity to add their own thoughts, just a few sentences if they want to, if the additional customization is important to them. And they can also update the image, either with an image that they have already as a file system for themselves, or I can actually leverage our Shutterstock integration. And I can license an image from Shutterstock using any of their current 375 million images. That image that I license, I can certainly customize, as you can see here, put a logo on it. If you've used Canva, it's very similar to that. That image would then be available for use in social, email, and the website as well. And then I would just hit send, and it's on its way. If the
can you try to put in like cocaine or something instead of drugs?
Yeah.
No, because some of these would be like not like rehab based. There's like this vaccine came out, but just to I think it'll be a good example. Yeah, put in like cocaine or something. Because I remember some of the ones I would just like randomly searching for. I was surprised at like how good they are without. I think the one I did was like fish ponds with one of our clients. They have
right,
a
we have a koi pond one. That's right.
Yeah. I'm like, well, how is this like so good? But put in cocaine or something.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and edit this here, or I could have created a new topic and compared them to one another. But if we go here and say
cocaine,
and I can still either leave this as also drug rehab since it's a specific phrase. You're not going to get as much of the kind of clinical trial content coming through. And I can go ahead and hit save here. And so this is going to look for anything that matches those criteria, and then separately is looking for that drug rehab criteria set and adding those articles together. And again, this is going to then go forward and update this twice a day. Topic creation does take a little bit of an art and a science together to get those criteria correct. So it's something that we can certainly here to assist with as well. And we do have live chat available to you at any point in time if you do want to have a direct conversation, or we'd be happy just to dive in and help to address and edit the topic criteria for you as well.
See, I like these. Yeah, this is a good example, right? Like pretty much like without whatever, whether you kind of have this like manual review process or make it completely automated and kind of like take the risk, right? Kind of just like eyeball it, and like a lot of this kind of like, yeah, this makes sense for a drug rehab center to kind of like put in their feed, right? So
we can exclude political content as well very easily. But I think you're exactly right. And then you can set up those criteria for the auto approval, where you're saying, for example, I only want the top 5 most relevant articles from this topic in a given week to be what's auto approved. It's not just approving the entire fire hose coming across. Think of your topics more as the content that is a candidate. And either you can manually approve that, or you can set up specific automated approval rules to ensure that only the articles that make sense to you and make sense to your client are put in there, and if they can feel confident that the content that's moving across is valid. Certainly for areas around drug rehab, maybe you do want to have a final set of eyeballs, right, before the article just gets blasted out on a social media network. But for other areas like koi ponds, for example, that's one that we can narrow in. It's fairly innocuous. If there's a big fish article that goes out there, everyone's going to still be okay with it. But an area like this, we'll certainly want to focus in on what types of content does that center really want to be sharing. And certainly, as we talked about, it doesn't have to be fully automated. And in many cases, really all they need is the content to be provided to them. They can just come in and click even the star button on the articles they think are good, and then that can automatically kick off sharing to social, sharing to the website, and bringing it to email. Articles can also be added in manually for any of those clients who do come across articles. Maybe they're like, oh, well, I read a ton of stuff. It's not the finding that's tough. It's the actual getting it to where it needs to go that's really difficult. So they can actually add in articles manually by just placing it into the collection. And within the next 45 days or so, we'll also have a browser plugin available to those users so that as you're reading an article, you can just click the little UpContent button on the top of your browser, and that's going to allow you to add that article right into the collection and then kick off the rest of your activities as well. So any other questions on the criteria, the flow at a high level? All right, great. So I do have a couple FAQ sales questions that have come up. I'd love to hear what the thoughts are of this group as you kind of think about a client. Questions that they may have, questions that you have about introducing it. Are there any clients that come to mind that this may fit into? All right, well, I will send this along with everything else, but certainly if there are any questions or thoughts, certainly want to make sure that you have the rest of your day available to you. And Mike, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Guess I didn't warn you. I'm like, you can try to ask people, but typically we're listeners more than askers. Besides me, I like to talk too much. But Scott, that was a very good, thorough presentation. Again, just to reiterate to everyone, I do think this solution does make sense for. Again, we don't necessarily do email newsletters. We don't necessarily, actively manage social media, campaigns, and it's something that I know my clients have asked for, and something that UpContent could be a solution for. And you could do your own research for content curation. UpContent isn't the oldest one out there. Is probably one of the newest ones, but it is the best rated and it has the best pricing. And we are in touch directly with Scott. And he's willing and able to talk to our clients as well. So, until he gets bigger, and then, we'll get like a sales rep. So, the opportunity is now. Scott, thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.